Two elephants had not seen each other for 10 years. When they met again at a sanctuary in Tennessee, researchers documented what happened. Both animals vocalized immediately, pressed their heads together, and began touching each other's faces with their trunks. Their names were Shirley and Jenny. They had been in the same circus 40 years earlier, when Jenny was still a calf. What Shirley remembered, across 4 decades and a decade of separation, was a specific individual. Not elephants in general, this one. Animals do not just have social groups. They have preferences, specific ones, and those preferences have measurable effects on survival, reproduction, stress hormones, and lifespan. This is not sentiment, this is data. And once you see it across enough species, the question is no longer whether animals can have best friends. It is why we ever thought they could not. Let's start with elephants, because elephants make the case harder to dismiss than almost anything else in the animal kingdom. Elephant herds are matriarchal. A dominant female leads the group, her daughters and their calves follow her, and the whole unit functions as a single moving intelligence. But outside that family unit, something else happens. Individual females form what researchers call bond groups, stable associations with specific females from other families. These are not random. These are chosen. They persist through droughts, through migrations, through years of separation. The Amboseli Elephant Research Project in Kenya has been tracking individual elephants since 1972. What they found over decades of data is that females with stronger, more stable bond group connections have roughly 50% higher reproductive success than females with weak ties. That is not a small difference. That is the difference between leaving behind 2 offspring or 4 over a lifetime. Whatever friendship means to an elephant, it is worth something. Evolution does not build mechanisms for features that do not pay off. The memory that underlies this is extraordinary. Elephants can recognize specific individuals from voice alone across gaps of more than 60 years. They can identify the bones of a dead family member, not any elephant bones, specifically theirs, and respond to them differently than they respond to bones from unrelated animals. They have been documented returning to sites where close associates died, standing over the remains, sometimes carrying bones short distances. The behavioral signature of grief is measurable and repeatable. Remove the close bond from an elephant's life, and you can detect the absence in its behavior for months. That is not metaphor. That is biology. Now the dolphins, because this is where the story gets complicated in a way most people are not expecting. Male bottlenose dolphins in Shark Bay, Australia, form alliances. 2 or 3 males bond together. This is called a first-order coalition, and they live together for years, sometimes a decade or more. They coordinate their movements, they synchronize their surfacing and diving, they assist each other during injuries, they touch flippers when resting, a behavior so consistently associated with close pairs that researchers use it as one of the primary markers for alliance strength. So far, this sounds like the elephant story, but it does not stop there. These first-order coalitions then form alliances with other first-order coalitions. A group of 4 to 14 males who cooperate at a higher level, second order. And then, those second-order alliances form super-alliances of 14 or more males that function as a coordinated block against other super-alliances. 3 tiers of nested, stable, strategic social alliance, each tier building on the relationships below it. Researchers who study this call it one of the most complex non-human social structures ever documented. And underneath all of it, the individual pair, 2 specific males who know each other better than anyone else in the system. The friendship is not just a nice feature of dolphin life. It is the foundational unit that makes the entire complex structure work. Physical contact is the marker researchers track. Flipper on flipper is a specific behavior, one male resting its pectoral fin on another's. Synchronized swimming, where two males move in near-perfect coordination for extended periods. Post-injury assistance, where an allied male will support an injured dolphin at the surface to help it breathe. These are not accidental. They are targeted. The behavior is directed at specific individuals and not replicated with others in the group. If you find yourself thinking about what this is like from the inside, that is good. That is what we explore here every week. Stay around. Now chimpanzees, where the friendship is embedded in economy. Chimpanzees groom each other. This is common knowledge. What is less commonly understood is that grooming is a currency with exchange rates. The time a chimpanzee spends grooming another individual predicts with measurable reliability whether that individual will share food with it later, whether it will come to its aid in a conflict, and how quickly it will respond if attacked. Grooming is not hygiene. It is investment. Frans de Waal, who spent decades observing chimpanzee groups at Arnhem Zoo in the Netherlands, described what he found as politics, real politics, with coalition formation, betrayal, and strategic reconciliation after conflict. The alliances that chimps form follow the logic of social debt and obligation in ways that are genuinely difficult to distinguish from what happens in human political systems. But the Leipzig Zoo study pushed it further. Researchers there identified pairs of chimpanzees who consistently spent more time together than with other individuals, what the researchers called best friend pairs. Then, they measured cortisol and heart rate in both animals during stressful events. The best friend pairs showed something specific. They synchronized. When one animal's cortisol rose, the others rose too. When one animal calmed, the other calmed. They were sharing each other's physiological stress responses in real time, through proximity and attention alone. Think about what that means. The friendship had gotten into the body, into the hormones. The nervous system of each animal was partly regulating through the presence of the other. That is not symbolic. That is structural. The friend had become part of how each chimp managed the world. Now, horses and cows, which are the species where the numbers are the simplest and somehow the most affecting. Researchers at the University of Rennes monitored heart rate in domestic horses during separation and reunion. When a horse was separated from a preferred companion, heart rate rose. When the companion was reintroduced, heart rate dropped by more than 20 beats per minute. The drop was measurably greater when the returning animal was the preferred companion compared to a non-preferred horse. The horses knew the difference. Their cardiovascular systems knew the difference. At the University of Bristol, researchers did similar work with dairy cows. Cows with a strongly preferred companion in a stressful situation, unfamiliar environment, slightly aversive conditions, had cortisol levels about 30% lower than cows in the same situation without their preferred companion. The friend functioned physiologically like a chemical buffer. Its presence dampened the stress response at the hormonal level. The cow's body trusted the specific other animal enough to lower its own alarm systems. These are not wild species with complex political alliances. These are domesticated farm animals. And even in them, the preference is specific. The physiological effect is measurable. And removing the preferred companion makes the animal measurably worse at handling the world. So why did any of this evolve? The obvious answer is that an ally has practical value. A second animal watching the perimeter is 2 sets of eyes instead of 1. An ally who knows the territory can lead toward food or water that the solo animal would miss. An ally who knows your offspring treats them differently than it treats strangers. An ally who has seen you sick before is more likely to recognize the behavioral signs early and stay close. These are real computable advantages that show up in survival statistics. The friendship pays its own rent. It pays it consistently enough that species after species, lineage after lineage, kept investing in it. But the neuroscience says something deeper is also happening. When an animal is in the presence of a trusted ally, the amygdala, the brain's threat detection and fear response center, shows reduced activation in response to the same threatening stimulus that would cause a stronger response when the animal is alone. The ally is literally down-regulating the fear response at the level of the brain. The friend makes the world less alarming neurologically. Not because the threat is smaller, but because the nervous system is calibrated to function differently when someone specific is there. This is what researchers call social buffering, and it is not unique to primates or to mammals with large brains. It appears across species too different from each other to share it through common descent, which means it evolved more than once. Which means the pressure to evolve it was strong enough to produce it independently in multiple lineages. Something that evolves that consistently across that much evolutionary distance is not an accident. It is a solution to a problem that kept coming up. The problem is the same for a dolphin and a cow and an elephant and a chimpanzee. Being alive is dangerous. The world is full of things that want to eat you, environments that will kill you, events you cannot predict. Being with someone specific, someone whose responses you know, someone whose presence your nervous system has learned to treat as safe, that is not comfort in a vague sense. It is a measurable reduction in the physiological cost of being alive. That cost reduction over a lifetime changes everything. Reproduction rates, immune function, survival in hard seasons, longevity. Friendship evolved because it works, because having one specific other is worth more than having many generalized others. The preference is the point. Next time your cat ignores every other cat it has ever met except one specific neighbor's cat, it will watch from the window. Next time your dog ignores most of the dogs at the park but strains toward one particular dog every single time, and you cannot quite explain why it is always that one. Pay attention to that. What you are watching is not a quirk. It is a very old system doing exactly what it was built to do. The question I want to leave you with is simpler than all the science. Does your pet have a specific other animal it clearly prefers? Not animals in general, a specific one. Drop it in the comments. What is the pair? I want to know. And if this kind of thing is what you are here for, the part where the animal world turns out to be stranger and more precise than we assumed, there is a lot more where this came from.